what I often say is, okay, you know what? I have this little technique that I think might really be helpful here. Now, it might seem a little strange, but if you're willing to play along and work with me, let's just give it a try and see what happens. And usually people will say, okay, that's that I'll do it. If they're in pain or they're uncomfortable or they're stuck or blocked in some way, they're willing to try anything. And so I explained to them that, the body has an energy system, and many people have heard of acupuncture and the idea of there being meridians or cords of energy that run through the body, and that when we get scared or when we have a trauma, small trauma or a large trauma, often there are blocks that get created in the pathways of that energy system, much like we think about in terms of acupuncture. And so I tell them what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you this little technique that will actually just start bursting through those blocks that you have in your energy system so that the energy can flow freely and we can release you from whatever anxiety, fear, or block that you're currently faced with. And that's about it. They're usually by that point, they're kind of curious and they'll say to me, okay, great, let's give it a try. And then I'll just teach them the simple setup phrase and start tapping with them, and then let them know that the great thing is that they can use this themselves. What I'm teaching them, I usually end up drawing a little sketch and, giving them instructions for afterwards so they can use it themselves. And people really like it, and the results are amazing. All of us as human beings get scared, we get anxious, especially in this day and age when many of us are so overwhelmed and stressed out. We have fears about things, certain phobias about things. Lots of people are afraid to speak in public, or they're afraid to fly, or they have phobias about snakes or animals or something like that. I mean, we all have something that we tend to be afraid of or to feel anxious about. And so it becomes a wonderful little tool that you can actually teach clients. That's what I love about it. Not only do I use it in my life, but you can actually, when I'm sharing it with somebody else, I love the idea that you can teach somebody to use it, and it very often will quickly improve the quality of their life and leave them feeling more confident, because now they know, wow, I just learned this strange thing, it actually worked for me, and I can take it with me and use it. So for example, when I'm working with people who have a fear of public speaking, it's a great technique to use just before you go on stage. And once the person uses it and they feel calmer and they're able to go ahead and speak, it now gives them an opportunity to express their talents and gifts in the way that they were probably meant to express their talents and gifts, but they couldn't because of that block. So in that way, EFT releases people from the chains that keep them bound to a mediocre life. And it also allows people to fully express the greatness of who they are. Let's say, for example, there's a certain goal that you want to reach, like you want to become debt-free. And there's a reason why you're in debt in the first place. So if we start to explore what those reasons are, usually we'll see there's a block about something, or there's a fear about something. Maybe you're afraid to look at your bills to be paid folder, or maybe there was a lot of anxiety about money when you were growing up. And so in that regard, you can decide on what the goal is, decide on the action steps you need to take to achieve the goal, and then look at what it is that might prevent you from achieving that goal. And you can start to use EFT as one of the tools. It's not the only tool, but as one of the tools that can start removing those blocks so that you're able to achieve your goals. Absolutely. I remember working with a colleague of mine, a mother of 3 small girls. We were traveling together, and we were having dinner one night, and she was sharing with me that she smoked cigarettes and that she was really embarrassed that she smoked cigarettes. And she also really felt horrible being a mother of 3 small girls and smoking cigarettes. And so I said to her, I have this little technique called EFT. And again, I explained about the body's energy system and how it was this odd little tool, but that it might help her. And I told her that, if she wanted, I would teach her the technique to help her possibly quit smoking. I'd never used it for smoking before, but I figured, what the heck, I use it for everything. Even though I smoke, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. Even though I'm a mom and I smoke, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. Even though I'm smoking and it sets a bad example for my children, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. And she burst into tears. And I could see really clearly, it was almost like I could see her block. I knew that the self-loathing she felt about smoking, the way that she beat herself up about smoking, was the actual thing that locked it in place. And so within 5 minutes of treating her, she said she had no desire to smoke whatsoever and quit smoking and stopped for good. Hadn't smoked again. So in that regard, not only was it helping her health, improving her health, but it was making a dramatic impact on her emotional and physical health, but also her children's lives as well. One of the most powerful things, one of the most powerful aspects of the treatment of EFT, I personally believe, is the setup statement, where we ask people, or where I say to myself, even though I feel blank, or even though I do blank, whatever the action or the thought or the belief might be, the negative thought or belief might be, I accept myself fully anyways. I think that's the most powerful aspect of EFT, because if there's one thing I've learned over the last 8 years of using EFT is that what locks our fear in place, our anxiety in place, our inability to take action, our inability to achieve the kind of life we want to achieve, is a lack of self-forgiveness and a lack of self-acceptance. If there's one thing that's become really clear to me, is the direct connection between energy, or the blocking of energy, and an inability to love oneself. And I've just seen it so many times, because I have felt it as someone who has used EFT both on my own and with a practitioner. I have felt the resistance to want to say, even though I'm afraid to get on stage, I deeply and profoundly accept myself, or even though I feel terrified about flying, whatever the resistance might be, even though I hate myself right now for the way I'm feeling, I fully and completely accept myself. I have felt what it feels, that the release that comes from embracing and accepting the fullness of who we are. And I've seen it time and time again with people where there's such resistance to accept and own the fullness of who we are. And it's that resistance that keeps us stuck. And so a lot of times people will say to me, I'll say to somebody, even though I smoke, or even though I drink too much, I deeply and profoundly accept myself. And the person will look at me and say, I don't want to say that. I don't want to reinforce that, that belief, or I don't want to reinforce that behavior. It's a typical response. I understand that completely. But the reality is, it's the inability to accept yourself with whatever fault you perceive that you have that's preventing you from moving forward. And I usually tell people, you'll figure that out in just a few minutes, because you'll feel it in your body. You'll feel it in the body's energy system as you begin to embrace it. And my feeling personally, after having worked with so many people and having experienced it so much myself, is that there's a big part of physical illness that's directly related to an inability to forgive oneself, an inability to accept oneself even with the illness. I think it's the most powerful part of the treatment. It's something that, if I'm going to use anything, if I'm sitting on a plane and I'm feeling nervous, I will simply just repeat to myself, even though I feel nervous, I deeply accept these feelings. Even though I feel upset about the argument, even though I hate Joe right now, I completely accept those feelings, so that it's in accepting them that we can then release them.